Martin Marietta. And like we said, we got to look at positive things, okay? So we're not lawyers. We have lawyers. The lawyers are going to take care of it. Martin Marietta is going to make their money on it. And we got to look at a positive thing. So what I would say, like we said with the drone park, 15, 20 years down the road, when Martin Marietta is done with it, we can be compliant with them, do whatever they want. They have 2 properties. Hey, you never know. There could be a string of highly populated bass tanks down there, and these kids will not be flying drones. They'll be fishing for bass. Okay, so let's listen to our lawyers. We don't have to get in all these discussions. I would hope that Mr. Mosier would speak to this issue. He's very versed on it for sure. He knows a lot about it, and I think a lot of y'all talked to them about it in the past too. But let's look at the positive things. We're not going to stop them. Hope the meeting goes well in a couple days, and we'll get it done, and then we'll have some bass fishing. I can't wait. I'll be 60 maybe.
Anybody else like to speak on item 6A?
Thank you for the introduction. Will Spencer Hart, 1306 Jackson Road. Former Mayor Carl Meek had some very insightful statements, which I believe should be respected. Martin Marietta won't sue Kerr County or the city of Kerrville in Kerrville. If they decide they want to have a lawsuit, it will be in federal court, and they'll be very serious about it.
Okay, anybody else like to be heard on this item?
For the record, I'd like to make a correction on Mr. Hart's statement.
Yeah.
In all due respect to Mr. Meek, not slamming him, but he was not mayor.
You're correct.
Okay.
Possible future.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Claudia Richner, and I am a former mayor of Smithton, Missouri. We intentionally moved down here, my husband and I, and we're building in Comanche Trace. I'm not opposed to stone. Our whole house is stone, limestone. We're in the process of building. I'm at 2864 Rock Lawn Drive. What concerns me most is, I think some of us are being a little short-sighted, is the water aspect. You can have gold, you can have diamonds, you can have anything. You have no water, you're in trouble. It won't matter, any of us. It just won't matter. One of the things I looked at before we came down here, and we looked in 4 different states. One of the things I looked at was the water here. And you've had water here, signs of civilization since 14-something. Now that may have been Mexican, that may have been Comanche, I don't know. But it upsets me that we're being so short-sighted. And there are regulations in other states with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, where you have regulations of quarries that are near rivers in regards to pollution. And there will be pollution. Apparently, there's been problems. If you look at the U.S. States in our water quality here. This will not help it. It will not. That's all I've got to say.
Thank you very much, and I will thank you very much for the emails that you and I have been sending back and forth. And I did bring one of those with me that showed the decline in property values next to gravel pits, going from 30, looks like about 32%, about a 32% reduction in property values. Mr. Hyde, would you state your name and address, please?
Trevor Hyde, 1077 Pinnacle View Drive. I get that we're not attorneys, those that don't have a legal degree. There are legal findings and conclusions and rulings on this, and the city clearly can annex properties. My brother-in-law is president of the company that had Corey annexed last year and has one being annexed right now. So I feel like I have close-hand knowledge, but I'm not an attorney either. And there are rulings, so I'm sure y'all be getting well versed on that. Annexation does not stop them from being able to run a quarry operation. Zoning can be put in place. We met with Mr. Roberts, president of Martin Marietta Southwest, not willing to make any agreements. I feel that hopefully with Todd and everyone, y'all can get to a workable solution. I think keeping the ball rolling is very important because it'll keep them on clock to get something done. They're not stopping working. You know, maybe they want to stop for 90 days. You know, would y'all stop for 90 days?
Well, we're currently running that, so,
I mean, if they're willing to stop the process, that's what Larry said. Hey, you got a gun held in my head, although it's got no ammo in it because you got a lawsuit. But if y'all will stop 90 days, that's only fair. I mean, I think Martin Marietta, if you really want to come to the table and work with the city, you'll stop.
we offered to come to the table from the very beginning as council members the very first time.
Mayor, could we get her to come to the microphone?
I need you to come to the microphone, please. State your name and who you're representing.
Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you. Alicia Knockenhauer, I'm the Regional Environmental Manager for Martin Marietta. This is one of my facilities. So what I wanted to say is if council remembers the very first time I came here when this was first on the agenda for consideration of annexation, I actually said we were opposed to annexation and that we'd seen a lot of these type of activities happen all across the country that have failed, but that we prefer to work proactively with the city and with council, come to the table and address your concerns proactively and work with you. So we said that from the very, very beginning. So we have not wanted to work with you. We said that from the very first time I was here. We have tried to contact, we've reached out to council and the city multiple times, trying to get together to speak ever since that date, and we're still open to speaking. So we've never closed our door. We've had multiple meetings with many people. We've made many phone calls. We've made many trips up here. We'll continue to do that. So we're very open and we genuinely want to work.
And we're still on the schedule for March 24th?
Yes, I'll be here.
Okay.
And Jack, I
Thank you,
appreciate
sir.
the document you had on property values, but this annexation is not gonna stop those property values. I mean, I know why you threw it out there, but it's not gonna, this action we're taking is not gonna change that.
So back to that, I appreciate that, and we did meet with Larry, and I know that so many council members have. It takes time to do stuff. To get to mediation without lawsuits and everything, both parties have to be willing to put down work and meet. So y'all are willing to do it. I want to see them stop. I want to see them stop for 90 days and meet with y'all. If they're willing to do that, that shows me they want to be a vested, good corporate citizen. And to do that, you have to stop.
Okay.
On 6.
Yeah.
Did anybody else
Yeah,
want to
yeah,
speak
yeah.
on 6A?
Tom Moser, 240 Ranchas Road. My name's been brought up several times. Just want to make it very clear that the county has talked with Martin Marietta many times about this. The county doesn't have the authority to do what the city can do with annexation and zoning. I think it's the intent of Martin Marietta to be a good neighbor. They have done in their planning what we've asked them to do, to put up berms along the road, to landscape those berms, and to do several other things. They don't have to do that. So I think all of us in the community need to realize that they have their property, they have their property rights, and I think Mr. Meek spoke to that. I think Stephen Fine has spoken to it. So I think as we continue the discussion, or as the city continues the discussion, recognize that you know, it's going to have to be a balancing act, and I think that that's the key thing. So I think that if it can be done so that they can do with their property what they want to do, and the community can get the best deal out of it, that's the thing that's got to be done. So I encourage you to do that.
Let me ask you a question since you're up there. You said that the county doesn't have the authority to do what the city does. If
Yes.
the county had that authority, would you have done it?
I don't know. I don't know. I think there'd been a lot of discussion with it okay? But without having that authority, you know, if we had that authority, I'd certainly see what the pros and the cons were. I mean, I don't make a decision without understanding the pluses and minuses.
When did you first start talking with Martin Marietta?
Oh, months ago, probably 6 months ago, 9 months
Year
ago.
ago?
Some, I don't know if it's been a year ago, but it's been 6 or 9 months ago. Yeah. Yeah.
When did you officially notify the city that y'all were having these discussions?
I don't think I ever officially notified the city that we were having discussions with what they were gonna do with the piece of property that's in my precinct.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
I
fine.
didn't see anything to discuss.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Okay, you bet.
Okay. Anybody else like to speak on item 6A? Then this item is,
I was gonna remain silent, but the opportunity's here. My name is Mitch Hogg. I live at 4651 Highway 27, which is part of Guadalupe Heights. And having attended the planning and zoning meeting last Thursday, referencing the comprehensive master plan for the city of Kerrville, I went and printed it out. And I read through it, and I gave Councilman White, Councilwoman White, some feedback on it. And you know, one of the things that was brought up today in regard to the other ordinances was screening. And it talked about inconsistent property uses, and it said there needed to be well-defined boundaries. I don't know if well was there, but defined boundaries and screening to minimize the adverse impact on other ones. And I look at Martin Marietta being one of their neighbors now, and they're doing that. They put a beautiful fence along Highway 27. They're installing these berms around their property at appropriate places. So I see them being cooperative in that regard, and yet I see, you know, most of the rhetoric in the press and from what I'm hearing this evening and what was going on at planning and zoning is that they're not being cooperative. They're not trying to fit in. So you know, Bonnie asked me yesterday on the phone. She said, "What would you like to see?" And I don't know what the right answer for that is.
who asked you?
Bonnie, Miss White.
Councilman White?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we spoke on the phone yesterday for a period of time about the comments that I offered, and she did use one of those that the zoning talked about what's most restrictive or what is applicable for the intended use, and that was one that I raised also. So I think it's been well stated what their intended use has been all along, and again, when I read it, it talked about preferred and guidance. That I didn't see any mandates in it. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to be heard? Item 6 is hereby closed. 6A. We're now on 6B. I've already read it. So, staff?
Yes. Believe it or not, I don't have a PowerPoint for you. Is that okay?
Oh, no.
Is that all right? But I do have a lot to say, but I'll borrow a page from Mr. Nimke. I'll be quiet. So anyway, just kidding. Okay. On January 26th of this year, Ms. Gaudier actually made a presentation to City Council, and the concept really was to look at establishing a delay for the demolition of qualifying properties within the community. And so really the objective of that would be to say, hey, not necessarily that the demolition of those properties would be prohibited, but that there's a cooling period or a wait time. And so it allows the community to really raise awareness of those buildings or structures that may be taken down, and to provide an opportunity to find another home, or to allow the community to get behind, do some fundraising, some other things like that to try to protect those facilities. And so City Council had directed, hey, bring this back to a future agenda. So in looking at this and doing quite a bit of research into the whole concept of demolition delay, it really becomes a pretty significant process. And looking through that process and what's recommended by the National Registry of Historic Places, there's some pretty good guidelines that talk about what demolition delay is and how it fits into an overall strategy within the community as a whole. Demolition delay, really, if you look at it, is combining two concepts into demolition delay. And it is a review process and then a permitting process. And so if somebody comes in and wants to demolish a building that the community has determined to be in a location or to be a facility that architecturally or from some other perspective is appropriate to the culture and history of the community, then you go through a process to say, hey, we're going to review that to see if the proposed demolition of that meets our criteria for what we would want to try to protect, or at least to preserve that structure in some form or fashion. So you go through a process to review, you check a box. If it meets that criteria, then you proceed on then to a specified amount of time where you defer demolition of that. If you find it doesn't, in that review process, doesn't meet your criteria, then you go ahead and issue a permit and things get delayed or get demolished or removed. One of the key issues, though, with a lot of older buildings is, are they safe? And so there are always provisions there where you have imminent health and safety issues as determined by the building official, that those structures can be demolished right away. This really kind of came to the fore because we had an older home, a historic home that had been taken down. In addition to that, we had a discussion pretty good in depth about a project that looked to potentially demolish another longstanding historic structure within our community. So that really is what kind of prompted this conversation. At the end of the day, when you really look at this, you know, what seems to be a relatively simple on its surface process to establish an ordinance and say, hey, let's just delay these demolitions, it's much more involved than that. We really need to begin talking about what types of structures are we talking about. And there's a lot of subjectivity to that. How do we define what reflects the culture and what reflects the history of our community? And then there's specific geographic areas in town where we probably need to look at as well. So with that, we really need some help from some of our local experts that can help us begin to look into this and research this some more to really kind of help identify what type of structures that need to be considered and then where those areas need to be considered. In addition to that, we need some additional expertise to help us evaluate and review these permits as they come in. Our staff and our building official can make rulings, and they're very good technically at deciding and looking at when a structure is not safe to habitate or when it may become a danger, an imminent danger. But we don't necessarily have the in-house expertise when it comes to identifying the historical significance of a structure or site. So with that, one of the requests that I would have is authorization to be able to work with our Kerr County Historical Association to really look at and help identify. There's a lot of research that they've already done into historic structures and the locations. They've done a lot of research in terms of the locations where we may have specific targeted areas that we want to kind of look and think about. But ultimately, I think what we have to ask ourselves is, what is the ultimate objective and where are we going? And really, demolition delay is part of a larger picture, which is historic preservation. And so really, it's a tool that ultimately leads into trying to preserve those areas that we have and those structures and that architecture that we have that make Kerrville unique, distinctive, and again, reflect our culture. That could be residential structures, commercial structures. It could also be, it could get down to protecting sites. Are there particular sites that need to be protected or preserved over a period of time? So really, this is kind of one step. Cities that don't do historic preservation, this is one tool that, again, helps to slow down the process and at least provide a home or an opportunity to try to save the structures as best you can. But I think when we look at this and think about moving forward with demolition delay, we really need to have that conversation about historic preservation. If you look across the community, there's areas in our town that are historically significant, both from what occurred there as a use and what occurred there and what was built there over time. We've lost a lot of our history over time. You know, one of the things that has been beneficial to Kerrville, it's been an active economy for many, many decades and generations, and land use has transitioned. You know, as a piece of property was deemed to be non-economically viable anymore, that was cleared off and new development occurred. And so that's been a process. So, you know, the question really is, what is our overall objective and where we want to go? I think the first step in this process is to reach out to our partners and to begin to identify, again, those areas that I discussed a little earlier, and to try to come back to you with an overall picture and a game plan about how that would look and some recommendations maybe on where we'd go and try to move forward. So
I love what you've done and this whole packet that you've given us. I also wanted to include some kind of incentives for preserving. I didn't want to just add regulations to say, yeah, that's your property, but you can't remove that building. I wanted to hopefully use hot tax to help offset some of the cost of refurbishing or making the building safe or something like that. So I didn't want it to be just more oppressive regulation, but I wanted it to also have some kind of incentives that we could entice them with.
Well, one thing that I don't know if a lot of people know is that when you have a historical designation for your property, there are potential property tax benefits that go with that. And so, and those are federal and state, and they kind of come on through tax code. So, there's some other built-in things that are there, and I think some, education of ourselves and our education within our community of, what some of those benefits might be. Maybe that tips the scales on, keeping a place preserved or finding a way to work around the demolition and removal of that part of our history and culture.
Okay. Then I'm gonna see if I can't take a step forward here. Recommend that this item be studied for the next 45, 50 days. Report back to council in 60 days. And further, that the city staff coordinate with Kerrville or the Kerr County Historical Commission to identify those existing structures and our districts in which demolition delay standards should be considered. And do you need a motion on that? Or can
Yes,
we
please.
just? Huh?
Yes, please.
You would? Just a minute, let me get a motion first. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Bill Morgan, 1744 Glen Road. Talking about demolition delay, I've been citizen 20 years. I'm wondering how much longer would delay we're gonna have on the Green Monster over in Francisco Lemos.
I don't know if that would be considered a historic building or not. Todd, is there anything that we can do to meet with the people who are developing on Via Saralita, the Schofield School?
Well, and I think that project's really going to be dependent upon the success of its housing tax credit process. So they're in a process right now to evaluate that. So that project really won't move forward or close until they determine whether they've been the successful bidder in our area.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Todd, just one thing, on page 9 of one of the pieces of papers you gave us, which was pretty voluminous, if you just make sure that there's something that caught my eye, which provides for the issuance of a finding of, quote, no feasible alternative to demolition. I think that's something important to look at. That's all.
Okay. Any further discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Item 6C, authorization to make application to the City of Kerrville, Texas Economic Improvement Corporation for a maximum of $250,000 for additional lighting improvements to the Lewis Hayes Park, Lehman Monroe Park, Cindy Baker Bridge, and the downtown pavilion. We have been talking ever since the River Trail about, or since the renovation of Lewis Hayes Park, about lighting of the bridge. And I want to, here's some pictures that are of some cities that have lighted bridges. Basically, I want you to visualize this. You're looking down on the river and you see the reflection of the lights up. You're looking down in the park and you're looking, and the lights are also reflecting, but they're also could be reflecting from the pavilion. And so you're talking about attracting a tourist. You are attracting hotel space, pillows taking, if you would, which creates additional hot tax. You're talking about additional sales tax from meals, and I can go on and on. Well, what an attraction. I know when I've traveled pretty much on every continent, and I've seen some pretty lighting. And sure, some of these pictures are pretty elaborate. We're not talking about elaborate millions of dollars like they've done here, but I want you to visualize that these lights are LED, so they're not high consuming of electricity. But yet you also have the capability to change the color of the light with a computer, and you change that color based on what theme you want to present at the time, whether it be Christmas, whether it be Easter, whether it be Memorial Day, July the 4th, or any other special event. So that's the reason that I put this on the agenda and brought it forth. And I'm just asking that the City Council authorize the city to make application to the Economic Improvement Corporation to make an application for lighting the bridge with not to exceed $250,000.
Is that your motion?
That is a motion, yeah, I'll make it.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. I open it up for discussion.
You're saying $250,000, what's that based on? Is that just we're gonna put $250,000 worth of lights on the bridge?
Over the last about, Todd, correct me on time, 2 or 3 years, we've talked to different vendors.
Okay.
We were very serious in talking with a vendor at one time. Unfortunately, there was, that corporation disappeared. Okay, so that kind of put it aside. Now we're back talking about it.
But I think in terms of where the budget comes from, that came from an estimate. They actually came down and looked at the Sidney Baker Bridge, and they looked at the pavilion, and they tried to look at kind of what their lighting technologies could be and about what their budget might look like. So
would that include like design? We think we could get the design done, purchase the lights, have them installed for
Correct.
$250,000?
correct. That was the estimate at that time.
That was this.
If y'all approve this, what we propose to do is get back with a designer and, have them finalize the scope, come back and,
And presented to ESC.
correct.
Any other questions, discussion?
I had a discussion with a gentleman this afternoon. I know that the tennis center is still in great need. The tennis courts are getting done, part of them, but the recreational part of it inside, the sales portion, the building is in horrible repair. Lytle Street Ballpark needs tremendous repair. Singing Wind Ballpark needs repair. I think it's gorgeous. I mean, there's a lot of gorgeous things that we could do. Is it priority for EIC? We have other projects, we have other assets that are needing improvements. I don't know what kind of budget they have to work with on that. And there's always the thought of what are we reserving for any kind of economic incentive for businesses. The last 5 or 6 months we have a 0 for commercial building permits. And so, something needs to be reserved for some kind of incentivization for businesses that come in and want to develop.
As a member of EIC, I know that the pool, the tennis courts, and the baseball fields are on their budget.
Yes.
So we're already considering all of those. They're on the calendar. So I think those issues have been addressed.
And one thing too, the EIC and council through adoption of the EIC budget has already approved conceptual funding for this project. That budget includes some economic development set-asides. There's some programming that's been in place through the official adoption of 380, 381, and 4B policies that specify participation with economic development, and we've utilized them through several of our local business expansion projects. So the funding for this took into consideration that very issue. And EIC does wrestle and talk about that from a policy and budgetary position every year as they go through setting their budget. And, and it's a plan, and, we've done budget amendments over time as project needs have come up. And, a lot of the major incentivization really comes through significant indirect, as well as direct cash as
Yes.
well. And so it takes a combination, and EIC tries to strive to achieve that balance, and that's reflected in
The
this.
EIC budget's available to the whole public, so anytime you want to see that, Mrs. White.
Yeah, I did check with one of the members, and they did say that it was presented for this budget as one of the possibilities. I didn't see it on ours because I have the 16 4B EIC Capital Improvement Fund 5-year plan in front of me. I didn't see it anywhere on there, but it was on the EIC plan. So you're asking for this to be sent to EIC, and then they would consider it?
That is correct.
Mhm.
Okay, any other questions? Bruce, you did. You want to step up?
We got all night.
Do we have to put in a letter for each ordinance or just one for?
That's all right, I'll recognize you.
Bruce Strachey, 821 Earl Garrett. I don't know enough about this issue to talk about the EIC and the money and stuff. All I wanted to do was ask you to consider doing this lighting under the standards of the International Dark Sky Association. We have wonderful stars here, and I'd like to encourage us to do that more and more here in the city, and so that was it. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
Hey, did you see what they've done here in the first picture? The lights are down, so.
I did, but I just didn't notice that it was mentioned that it was gonna be done.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're proposing to do.
Sure.
Yes, sir, you want to step up, please?
And while you're going up there, Todd, I've had several people want the Dark Sky Initiative kind of as an overall city policy. So we might start considering that for all of our lighting while we're considering this lighting.
Okay, yes, sir, go ahead, state your name and address again, please.
Yes, sir. Brian Shimlack, 611 Lytle Street. I actually like the idea. I think it's a great idea. I think you're all right. One of the things I just wanted to throw in, and then I'll leave because before my kids die of boredom, no offense.
They want to fly their drone before they.
Yeah,
go
Ryan's
to
going
bed.
to say it's about that time. So, one of the things that, of course, we talked about Lytle Street Park. One of the things I've been discussing and trying to speak with a couple of you, hopefully in the future, about maybe some more lighting out there. We've had some illegal activity that has gone on there, and the police department's done a great job of dealing with it. But most of that comes from it's dark right there in the parking lot for the most part. We're starting to have a lot more activity from people that are out there jogging and walking with their kids, especially at night. So I would propose either on this situation or even later in the process, maybe having something with the Lytle Park, because it kind of gets left out a little bit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Those opposed? Motion carries 4-1. We have item 7A, budget and economic update. Sandra?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report is for ending, February 29th. Our revenues for the month of February for general fund was $5,466,124, with our year-to-date of being $14,643,581. Our expenditures for the month of February was $1,689,654, with our year-to-date expenditures being $9,523,708. For the water sewer fund, our revenues for the month of February was $857,247. Our year-to-date revenues of $4,658,316. Our expenditures was $721,654, with our year-to-date expenditures of being $4,017,523.
Would you put that last slide back up, please?
Okay.
So our year-to-date on water sales is up.
Yes, sir.
Even though we've had a more rainy season this year than we
But
did
our,
last
but
year.
our overall consumption's up, and I just updated the March billings, and again, it's continuing that way.
Just wanted everybody to hear,
Yes.
to understand that.
Okay. On our hotel motel tax for the month of February, we had $57,047 revenue, with year-to-date being $388,583. Our expenditures for the month was $225,250, with our year-to-date being $453,100. Whoops, just a second here. The next section of it is an update on our community investment plan of our ongoing major projects, showing our project balance, our current month expenditures, our project-to-date expenditures, and the budget balances left on those. And then the bottom part is our economic update. Our permits issued for the month of February, we had 9 residential permits, no commercial permits, bringing our year-to-date of 39 permits for new housing. And then we have our housing report from Kerrville Board of Realtors and our unemployment, which seems to be holding steady.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions? Thank you, Sandra. Item 8A, appointment to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Brenda?
Yes, sir. We have 3 terms that are due to expire March 31st, and we have 3 applications on file. All applicants meet the minimum qualifications for the board. The interview team were council members Jean Allen and Bonnie White, and they requested the appointment be placed on this agenda.
Okay, Gene, you're liaison for that committee.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any motion or comment?
I would move that we appoint all 3 applicants, Jacqueline King, Jay Munson, and Mr. Schrader.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Having heard none, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by raising your right hand. Motion carries unanimously. Items for future agendas, we already have one that Stephen asked for a future agenda, and I told you that I would take item 5 from the other and put it on a future agenda for drones. And Todd will probably, if we can bring that back on a future agenda, bring it back for the establishment of an ad hoc committee to work with the city staff on that. Anybody else for a future agenda? Ashley, do we have any announcements? Nothing. Anything with the library? Any activities? School's it's not close enough to ending school yet. I do want to remind everybody that Sunday is Easter Sunday. There is a service at the cross up on the hill, and so there'll be a service there on Sunday morning. I think it's 7 o'clock.
7 a.m. to 9 a.m.
7 a.m. to 9.
I do have one. Chaos 2000, the Kit Werline Annex, since it's now official. The name of the grand opening is April 3rd. It'll be a Sunday from 2 until 6. The actual grand opening will be at 2 o'clock. So that's a big step to get that down there behind the Cowboy Dealer.
And Mayor, City offices are closed on Good Friday.
Oh, yes, and this Friday, City Hall offices are closed.
Mayor, the chamber sponsoring Easter Fest this Saturday at Flat Rock Park.
Good, good, we have Easter Fest at Flat Rock Park.
Free, if you sign up to be a taster, there's a lot of free barbecue.
Are they having drones?
They probably could, yeah.
Okay, but there be none further, I don't think we have anything for executive session, do we? Okay, having no further business to come before this council, city council adjourned at 8:35 p.m. Thank you all for coming.